Hey everybody, I am just getting set up here. I actually don't know if this is working right now, so if you are somebody in the chat who shows up, let me know in the chat if it's working, because I am totally winging it right now. First time using OBS, so give me a second. Yeah, and again, if you are somebody that is in the chat, definitely drop something in the comments because I am still setting this all up. Huh. Oh, it's live. Can I watch it over here? I can. Okay, hey folks. So it looks like this actually is streaming. I see it over in the chat here. If audio is coming through, can you let me know? Because I don't seem to be getting audio when I am looking at it over here. Test, test, test. Hold on. You might hear an echo. Bear with me, folks. I'm just getting everything set up here. I see it over. There we go. It is working. Okay. All right. Hey, everybody. So my name is Josh. I don't know if anybody's actually in the stream yet, so no stress. I think I may be the only one in here, but I'm just going to do a little test run here. First time ever doing this on YouTube. So I do cool, crazy Excel stuff. People typically know me for my Excel dashboards. It's kind of big, crazy stuff like this that you see behind me. And I help teach people how to do this stuff, or just encourage people to leverage some of the visual design features in Excel. There are a lot of them, and they often really don't get used. So I've been kind of trying to surface these so that folks know that they exist in the first place, encourage people to start using them and testing them out. And yeah, it's been a fun adventure. I have really just started doing all of this, so I'm kind of getting used to all the new technology, posting on YouTube and TikTok and all of that. So if you do drop a comment just so I know this is working. I can see it. I can see the stream, but I don't really know if the stream's coming through or not. So if I see anything in the chat, that'll help me keep me up to date on whether or not this whole thing is actually working or not. I do see that there are a few people watching, though, it says. So, hey, maybe it is. Okay, so here's the basic concept. This is kind of how I pitch this idea of using the design features in Excel. So Excel has a very similar set of features that you would see in PowerPoint. In fact, they're identical. They're a perfect match. So we have the ability to drop in shapes, images, we can drop in icons, we can even drop in 3D models, all the kind of stuff that you would do in PowerPoint. And just like in PowerPoint, Excel has layers. So if you've ever been in PowerPoint, you drop a shape in, maybe drop an image on top of that, you drop text on top of that. That's kind of what we're doing here in Excel. So we are essentially putting in shapes, stacking them on top of each other, adding images on top of that, the whole thing. And as those all kind of stack up, it allows us to create more complex, more visually interesting designs. Now, I don't know why, but for some reason, nobody ever gets taught about this stuff. Oh, hey, and Tiger777, thank you so much for letting me know it's working. I appreciate it. I'm seeing the chat showing up now. Thank you. Anyway, so as we layer things together, we can start to create more complex designs like this. And people just don't really think of using Excel this way. I don't know why. We just, like I said, we never get taught about these features, these visual design features. It's just nobody ever tells you about it. And I think the moment people do learn about them, it opens up a lot of possibilities, lets you do stuff you might not really thought of being able to do at all before. it's wild to me, right? I mean, like this is such a huge opportunity, I think, that gets overlooked. Oh, who's who in the chat? And I'm so sorry if I pronounce your name wrong. Hussein, maybe? Just said Excel legend, which I really appreciate. Thank you, Hussein. And if I pronounce your name wrong, let me know. Sorry about that. So, I think the building block to all of this is first thinking about how you create a PowerPoint slide, right? If you've ever created a PowerPoint slide, you're going to have most of the skills that I used to create this. So like if we look at the screen here, this example, this is a rounded rectangle in the background. I have kind of edited that rounded rectangle to make it a little glowy and cool, but it's basically just a rounded rectangle. I believe it's got a sort of transparent fill, a little glowy line on the outside, and I've just used one of the standard things in here, which is a glow, to kind of make it light up. I just stacked a few more rounded rectangles on top to create each of my shapes, each of my little sections that I'm going to put my visuals on. Then everything on top is the stuff you're probably more familiar with in Excel. So on top of this, we've got our text, we've got our metrics. Our metrics are a text box that points to a cell with a value. On top of that, we've got some charts. This is a geo chart, donut chart, line/bar chart, etc. So that's more of the stuff that you're probably used to using Excel. A lot of times when we drop stuff into Excel, we're really like, we're starting with something that looks kind of like this, right? And then we're like dropping in a bunch of charts, and we use kind of the default chart selections. So our charts end up looking, you know, I don't know, something like this, right? Like kind of boring. And we just don't really take the time to customize them or explore the kind of visual options that we have in Excel. So I know everybody's not a visual designer, of course. Not everyone's going to just jump in and be able to start doing really beautiful kind of stuff. That takes a little bit of practice. But everybody, in my opinion, that uses Excel has a big opportunity to just kind of level up their overall designs and their overall kind of Excel sheet output by just learning some of these concepts, how to use these visual design features, and just starting to use them the best they can. You don't have to master it, but just a little bit of visual design work goes a really, really long way for creating like really beautiful, incredible reports and dashboards in Excel. So I'm just going to pause here for a sec. That's kind of the intro. I'll probably give that little intro again later on if more people join the stream. But if anybody has questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. I will keep an eye on that as much as I can. And I'm happy to talk about topics too, like if you're interested in career advice and working in Excel, or you're interested in different types of visualizations, or when to use Excel and when to upgrade to another tool, that sort of thing. I'm happy to chat about all that as well. So another element in all of this that I think is really cool, and this is something you see all over YouTube. There's a million of tutorials about how to build dynamic dashboards, but if you build these and you use pivot charts, pivot tables, and that sort of thing, you can make it so that it will dynamically update as you select your data. I don't know why my geochart's flashing on and off. That doesn't normally happen. I think there's just a little error going on, but essentially you can create a chart that will dynamically update according to the data in your table to show whatever you want to filter down to. So this is really useful, right? Because a lot of times our data we start with looks like this, where it's just like a big table of data. Every single month we go into the bottom of the table and add more rows or something, copy paste them in or manually add them. And as you do that, you want that to flow through to the actual report on the front end. You don't want to have to like manually do everything and manually remake everything. You want it to just flow all the way through, and then you want to be able to filter down to see it. So you could put like a date filter here and always see the latest month or the latest week. In this case, I have a region filter, so I can always drill into the particular region I want to look at. You can use these in all sorts of different ways, and they're all leveraging pivot tables and pivot charts. So how I structure these is I typically have my raw data, where I just copy paste my data in or manually add my data. Then a pivot table sheet or a data processing sheet. This is where I like take that raw data and turn it into something useful. And then my last sheet is typically my actual report that you see on the front end. And so we're kind of creating like a data flow here from one step to the next. And give me 1 second, folks. I hear my cats causing trouble over here. Okay. I think they're okay. I'll bring the cats on the stream at some point if they are feeling cooperative today. So that flow is a really effective way to kind of pinpoint when there's issues in your data. It gives you kind of separate steps to look at what the output is. It keeps things, in my opinion, a lot easier if you want to edit stuff down the line or make any changes. Okay, so that's a little bit of boring stuff. The practical aspect of all this is like, hey, what skills do you need? So obviously you want to know how to make pivot tables. If that's not a skill that you have yet, there's like 1 million free tutorials on YouTube about how to make pivot tables. But you really also want to learn how to make pivot charts. So under the Insert tab, you have a pivot chart option up here. And what that does is it just drops in a pivot chart based off of a pivot table. And you select what's in it the same way you do with a pivot table. So essentially, sorry, let me right click in here and show the field list. You create it just like you do with a pivot table over here. And that powers the chart. And you can take those charts and turn them into any type you want by just going to the Design tab and changing the chart type to whatever you want it to be. When you do this, it allows you to connect what's called a slicer to it. A slicer is that filter we saw before over here. Oh, excuse me, this one here. A slicer is this filter, and then that filter will update the pivot table. So you're able to create kind of a dynamic filterable dashboard in Excel like this. It's a simple idea. Putting it into practice can take, it can take a little bit of work. You probably won't get it right the first time you do it, but it's totally doable. I typically teach people this by just sending them sample templates and having them use that base and trying to kind of pull it apart, deconstruct it, rip it all apart, see how each piece works. That's kind of my typical approach for this stuff. Here's another example. This is just like a little e-commerce dashboard template I built a while ago. You'll see this particular template gets replicated a lot. A lot of people unfortunately stole this template and resell it. So you'll see it around, unfortunately. But anyway, this is just a cool example of how we use these slicers, and we can even use multiple slicers to start doing really complex filtering of our data and digging in and seeing our data through a lot of different lenses. And again, this is all totally standard Excel features, right? We're not doing any custom coding. We are not doing anything fancy here, right? We're not like going in and using plugins or something. These are just regular old Excel features applied in kind of creative ways. And looks like we have a question from Ibrahim. He says, "Hi Josh, this seems so difficult when I first stumbled upon your channel on TikTok, but you made it so easy. Hands down, you have the best channel. I love your work." Thank you, Ibrahim. I really appreciate that. Yeah, I try to make this as easy as I can for people because a lot of the tutorials I don't think simplify it enough and they make it kind of overwhelming. So I'm doing my best to break down the steps as best I can. Yeah, I hope the channel can have some more success on YouTube. I have I think 50 times more followers on TikTok for some reason. Don't know why, but yeah. So Ibrahim asks, how do you change the colors on the slicers? So it is really hard, Ibrahim. I hate to be the bearer of bad news here. And I am actually streaming on my Mac right now, which makes it even harder. In fact, there's a lot you can't change with the slicers on a Mac, unfortunately, but let me break it down for you. So essentially, you have a slicer. And a slicer is this little filter here. It lets you filter your pivot tables and your pivot charts so you can have cool filterable dashboards like this. When you go to your slicer style sheet, there's going to be a bunch of default styles that are provided by Excel. Unfortunately, they don't look that great, and most of them don't work for most people's designs. So what you have to do is take one of them. I'm just going to apply one of these ones here. And in your menu, you're going to, if you right click it, you'll have the option to duplicate it. Once it's duplicated, you're going to have the option to style it. Now, this is going to look different on a PC. I apologize. All my streaming stuff is on Mac, so I have to use a Mac for this. But on a PC, you'll have a similar window like this where you can start styling things. The reason this is so difficult is that this menu works in a really non-intuitive way. So it's kind of like a cascading style sheet. Like the first thing you're defining is the whole table, and that is going to filter down to everything in your slicer. But then as you go into each individual thing, you're going to then be able to go within the whole table. How do I want this styled? How do I want this styled, etc. That process can be really confusing and non-intuitive. It doesn't work as well as I would like it to, and the results rarely are what you want them to be. So, one thing I do, part of my newsletter that I send out, is a slicer and timeline style sheet. And hold on one sec, folks. I'm going to have to go get my cats here in a second. I don't have the style sheet here to open up right now, but essentially it is a bunch of slicer styles I've created, and you can copy paste them into your own doc. Hey guys, just give me like 5 seconds. My cats are going crazy. It literally will be 5 seconds. Okay, kids. Let's go. Okay, there we go. Okay, I'm back, and I've got a cat with me because my cats were fighting. So anyway, it can be very, very difficult. And so what I suggest is, if you can find an example of a slicer you like, if you copy that slicer and paste that slicer into your Excel sheet, all of a sudden the new style for that slicer is going to show up here in the custom style section, and then you can just apply it to your own slicers. I wish there was an easy answer to this one, Ibrahim, but unfortunately it's just like one of the super frustrating things about Excel is that they make it kind of difficult to do this. And if anybody else has any questions and stuff, feel free to drop them in. I will be here answering questions as I go. I find that often these streams are more fun when it's just folks asking questions and me answering them as we go, instead of me like walking through a bunch of tutorial stuff. Yeah, so I don't know if we have anybody new in the stream, but if we do, we're just going over cool Excel stuff and showing how you can use kind of standard Excel features to be able to build really cool, complex, really interesting dashboards and stuff, and how it's not as difficult as you might think. And we've got my cats going crazy in the background, so there's lots of cat noises. All right. So let me go back over here. For some reason, whenever I'm streaming, if I have these cool neon little dashboard cards I made up in the background, people seem to really like that. So I'll use that as the default background as we go. Let's see here. So I don't see any other questions in the chat right now, so I'm just going to keep going. So as I mentioned before, what we're doing here is we're really layering things together, and this goes to that metaphor of using Excel a little bit more like PowerPoint. As you stack things together, that's how designs are made. And like I said, we've almost all done this in PowerPoint before. We've all kind of built a slide where you put in shapes, put stuff on top of each other, layer it all up, right? But I think there's a bigger concept here, which is when we build a PowerPoint slide, we actually think about how we're communicating with our data. We think about if things are clear or confusing, or if we're wording things properly, or if we have too much information or too little information on each slide. And that's the kind of stuff that transfers over really well to Excel. And I think it's the biggest missed opportunity in Excel, if you want to make your work stand out, is just thinking about how you communicate with it. Sweet. Luke just said, I applied some stuff from your TikToks to create a dashboard for my boss. Made me look way smarter. Luke, I'm super happy to hear that. And that's what the channel's all about, is just making people get noticed at work. And like, my goal is to get everybody a raise at work if they're using Excel. So like, yes, I love it. I hope it gets you noticed. I hope it gets you a promotion. Go for it. That's awesome. And congrats. And if you have any questions too, feel free to ask them. You're more than welcome to. I'll be keeping an eye on the chat as we go. So when we talk about like thinking about what you actually put on the page and how you're communicating with your data, a lot of that comes down to just like giving the relevant context and understanding your audience. So that can be a little confusing when I say it like that, but when I say giving relevant context, it means like explaining what is actually in your dashboard in words that people understand. And that requires you to know your audience, the second thing I just said, because if you don't know your audience and how familiar they are with your data and their level of proficiency with your data, you don't really know what to show them and what they're going to understand and not understand, right? These dashboards that I use in my examples, these tend to be a little bit more complex. They tend to be tailored to an audience that has maybe a little more experience, that is a little more familiar with this stuff. But if I was showing this to somebody who was like in the C-suite, right? Chief marketing officer or something like that, I probably wouldn't be just throwing all these metrics on a screen like this. I'd have less metrics, more explanation, and it would be boiled down to like what is most important and what is going to affect them and the decisions they have to make. And again, like this is just like if you were writing something, if you were writing a report, or if you were making a PowerPoint slide, you'd really think about who your audience is, how much they understand, how to communicate with them, etc. And we just, for some reason, when we get into Excel, we just get into like what I call data mode. And data mode is like when you're just thinking about putting metrics in front of people randomly without thinking about them, and just like grabbing metrics and charts and throwing them on the page. And that can be very, very not just confusing, but you can actually do damage doing that, right? If you accidentally put a bunch of metrics in front of somebody who's a decision maker that they can't properly understand, they might make a decision that like causes problems for your organization or costs a lot of money or messes with somebody's job, right? So like I really encourage people to take that time to think through it. Sometimes my examples I don't think do that very well because like I'm trying to make really cool stuff to get people's attention, to get them to start using the design features. So I'm not like doing a lot of kind of explanation of the work, but I probably should be doing more of that, frankly. Let me see, what do I have here that we can look at? Light blue theme. Let me grab that. And let me also get my cat off the table. They're knocking things over. Be right back, folks. 2 seconds. Okay, guys, stay troublemakers. 1 troublemaker, 2 troublemakers. Okay, thanks for waiting, everybody. It's just going to be a sec here. Oh, oops. Looks like I tried to open a file that can't be opened. Let me close that. I'll show you some examples of this here in a sec. I got 2 cats, by the way, who are little troublemakers that are fighting with each other, so they're going to stay with us on the stream. You might hear cat noises. Okay, so let me show you this example. This is a fun one I've been working on lately. So this is just a fun little template I've been working on for the newsletter lately. And again, feel free to ask questions as we go. So this one was essentially taking a tiny, okay, Gummy Bear. Essentially taking a tiny, Gummy, please, sir. Sorry. Gummy is very loud. He's a very vocal cat. We're taking this tiny little table, and we're using it to build tons of different charts. Now, this isn't necessarily good practice. You shouldn't just build any charts you can. But the idea here is that your small set of data is plenty to start doing data visualizations, right? One of the most common things I hear from people is, oh, I don't have sample data. I don't have good data to work with. How do I get started? And I always tell people, like, it doesn't matter. You can have the tiniest set of data in the world and build really cool, useful visualizations. So we can jump into each of these. I think it could get a little tedious, but the basic idea here is that this tiny table creates all these different visuals, and they all communicate a different idea, right? Each one has its own strengths, its own weaknesses, and that's the creative part of this whole Excel data visualization process, right? Like we're getting creative with this stuff. So like here, let me just give you a quick example, right? Here we've got a double bar chart. It's showing the 2 years for each of these countries. This is the total World Heritage Sites in Norway, Denmark, and Sweden, how much they change from 2004 to 2022. So this chart is really good at showing proportionality, right, between Denmark, Sweden, Norway. It's also really good at showing proportionality between the 2 years. So you're getting 2 levels, right? You're seeing how much is it changed year to year, and how big of a difference is there between each of these places, which is great. But it doesn't do a couple of things as effectively, and that's where we could look at this slope chart, the one next to it, which is really good for showing the rate with which something is increasing, because it's really emphasizing that angle of the line, and it's really good at showing changes in rankings. So if we look at this, we quickly see Denmark crossed above Norway from 2004 to 2022, right? Something that isn't as clear when we look at this bar chart. You can figure it out looking at the bar chart, but it's not the first insight you get from it. Oh, guys, Gummy is a little grumbly guy today. He really wants to go fight with his brother. So that kind of process in the world of data visualization is the creative part of going like, hey, what am I actually trying to say with my data here? What am I trying to communicate to my audience? How do I want to communicate it? And if we get a little creative with this stuff and we start implementing just a little bit of visual design, you can do cool stuff. Like I love this little example I built here. Again, this is all powered by just this little data set, and we're able to build something that looks great. And it actually communicates, I think, a little more. Oh my goodness, coming. Okay, all right. I'm gonna let you go. Go wrestle with your brother. I think it communicates a little more effectively than just showing somebody a data table, right? Yes, some of this is just putting numbers on the screen, but how we put those numbers on the screen, where we put those numbers on the screen, what visualizations we pair them with can go a long way to like communicate more effectively and also be more visually engaging, right? It's a big part of this world. If you want to work in data and analytics, like a huge part of the process is just figuring out how to get people to actually use stuff. I learned this early in my career. I was building like big dashboards for Google and Lego and Gatorade and giant brands. And what came up over and over again is that dashboards that don't look good and aren't really like well designed don't get used as much. It's not totally rational. I wish that people were a little more rational about how they used and looked at their data. But the bottom line is that you really do have to make things look good because people will make assumptions about how credible you are and the quality of what you're presenting them based off of visual design. And the reason I do this all in Excel is because we all have access to Excel. We all use it. Every company on earth uses Excel to some extent. And the fact that you can still do all that stuff, still make really well-designed, nicely laid out, super clear and actionable reports in Excel is something I think a lot of people maybe just don't know about. So that's kind of the goal of all this. Anyways, I got all sorts of weird, funky charts in here. Just some of the classics and the stuff people ask me about all the time. If you have any particular charts you want me to talk about or anything, you can let me know in the chat, but it's no big deal. I just wanted to share this with everyone because I think it's fun. And I think it can be it's a good way to illustrate some of this stuff to folks. I'll go back over to the pretty neon dashboards for a second. So I got all sorts of topics I can talk about. If folks have stuff they want me to talk about, again, let me know in the chat. I am only going to be on for another 20 minutes, 15 minutes. So if you have anything, ask now. Inserting the map was a game changer. This is from Ibrahim. He says, inserting the map was a game changer for me. I'm in the insurance industry and I was able to display the number of policies sold and claims per province in South Africa. Oh, that's cool, Ibrahim. Yeah. And I'm curious if you used two separate geocharts for that or if you put them both in the same one. Somebody asked me about that. I'm wondering if you were the one who asked me about that. So that's a great thing about geocharts, I think. So some context for anyone interested in using geocharts. And let me see if I have my good geochart here on the list. Okay, I can't show you that because it's got a bunch of client stuff. But essentially, when you drop a geochart in like this, there's a few things to keep in mind. One is geocharts aren't great at showing proportionality. It's very hard for me to look at this and tell how much bigger California is from all these other locations, right? It doesn't communicate that very effectively. But it does give you a sense, right? Like you do get a sense that one has more than the others. So that in itself can be a really useful insight. But I also think geocharts are really, really great for giving contextual information. Like in this case, our geochart is almost more like a UI element. So let me move my head here so you can see it. As I change regions, let me change a region really quick. All of a sudden it lets you know what you're looking at, right? It's a UI element in the sense that it's helping you navigate your data and say, hey, I'm looking at central right now. I'm looking at west. I'm looking at east, right? That is a really powerful feature to be able to introduce to the stuff that you're working with. And I have done a ton of dashboards, all sorts of different types. And the bottom line is like when I A/B test two of my dashboards, one without a geochart, one with a geochart, the one with the geochart always gets used more in every single test I've done. I've done a lot of these tests. I've done them with pretty big sample sizes of users. Like it's pretty incredible how much people seem to love geocharts and how much they engage with them. If you are in Excel and you don't see a GeoChart option, I think it's probably because you don't have the Office 365 subscription. So unfortunately, it is limited to folks that have Office 365, I believe. I get asked a lot of questions about that. Folks say, where's my GeoChart? I can't find it. And that's usually why it's not showing up, if it's not showing up. But yeah, really, really great chart types. Okay, what else can we talk about here? So a lot of people ask me about colors, visual design, that sort of thing. Obviously I can't simplify all of visual design down into like one simple lesson, but a few things that I tell people. One is find good designs that you like with color schemes you like. They don't even have to necessarily be dashboards. It can be a PowerPoint slide. It can be anything. And start there. Use that for your base color. Bring those colors in. If you have like a color dropper tool, which is like a tool that lets you select colors, let me show you. You can use that to just grab them off of the document. So like if we go in here, actually, no, we'll do it this way. So if I go to more colors, this is going to show up on Mac. I don't think this is on PC, but it may be. You can just use this little color picker tool and it'll let me grab whatever color I click on. Use that and then grab your colors that way. That's a great place to start. Somebody says, I have multiple years worth of sales data. What is a good way to show year-to-date over year-to-date sales volume? Okay, I mean, that's a good question, Luke. So you're wanting, okay, so specifically we're showing year-to-date over year-to-date. I think the first thing is just prepping your data so that you actually have the metrics for year-to-date over year-to-date, right? That's going to be, for some people, that's going to be the hardest part, especially if their data is a little messy or not in the right format. So once you have those metrics boiled down, there's lots of ways to display them. I mean, honestly, this is like a pretty textbook example of just using a bar chart. You don't have to use necessarily a vertical bar chart. You could use a horizontal bar chart like this. But I mean, literally just two bars showing year-to-date over year-to-date sales volume compared is like one of the more effective ways to show that. It's hard to argue that there's a better visualization type for that, really. If you're trying to show year-to-date over many, many years, like you're trying to show the time series, then I think there's a lot of different ways to do that. But you can do a double bar chart with your x-axis being years, right? Each year, one after the other, and then have two bars, one for like current year versus previous year. You could do that. That would get a little confusing, I think. Anyway, yeah, just some thoughts quickly. Unfortunately, it's hard for me to say much more without actually seeing the data. But hopefully that's a little helpful. I sometimes feel like I give people bad advice just because, I can't see their underlying data when I give them advice on this stuff. I'm sometimes kind of guessing, right, what their data looks like. All right. Okay. Cool. Oh, we have 7 people watching. All right. Again, folks, I literally have never done a live on YouTube before. This is like just a test. I just had like an hour before my next meeting and I thought I'd test this out. So thank you all for tuning in. Thank you everyone who's asking questions and in the chat as well. I really appreciate that. Helps me figure out what the heck to talk about. And for being patient with my noisy cats. Let me go back over here for now. So, let's see, what else can I talk about here? I think a big one that I've been getting asked about a lot is just, where do I get started? How do I learn about this stuff? I want to get into Excel. I want to build cool stuff like you have here. How do I do it? So I offer a lot of free learning resources. That's what my channel is all about. I've got the newsletter that you can join that's got all the free templates. Like, I'll give you everything I can to help you learn, but sometimes there's more foundational knowledge that I'm not going to be teaching about, right? So if you are kind of there and you're like just getting into Excel, a couple of things I suggest. One is pick a particular type of work you want to do with Excel instead of just trying to learn Excel in general. So like, yes, there are some foundational skills for Excel in general you should learn. You should learn how to make pivot tables. You should learn how to do lookups. You should learn some of that stuff. Learn how to merge two tables together, right? But there's just such a broad array of skills you can learn in Excel that I think it can be overwhelming. But if you say, hey, I want to learn how to do social media marketing data analysis in Excel, and you focus on that and you like work towards that goal, and as you like find sample data and then start to analyze it and run into an issue, you then go and learn the skill to solve that issue and right and have like a direction you're going in. I think it's a much more effective way to learn kind of Excel skills in general. That's just my personal opinion. I find those people tend to go much farther and they tend to get much more deep skills in the space. I was talking to this amazing guy in the Excel space, Oz DeSolier. Oz is on YouTube. He's got LinkedIn courses that are like the big LinkedIn courses. He's just an amazing guy. And Oz, he was talking about how like nobody knows everything in Excel. Even the folks that do incredible, insane custom VBA like script stuff in Excel, they have kind of their segment of it. And it's important to kind of figure out what your segment is, what area of Excel you want to dig into, because trying to learn it all and master it all, I think is kind of a fool's errand sometimes, because it really can't be done completely. For me, obviously, it's the visual design stuff, right? That's become kind of my thing. It's dashboards, it's information design, right? So what is the thing for you? And answering that question is going to really help as you start to learn. And if we have any other questions, like I said, feel free to drop them in the chat. I'm on for another like 10 minutes and then I got to hop off. So if you got questions, ask them now. I don't know how long of a delay there is on the stream either. Andrea said, that is how I learned. Oz helped me with Git and Transform. Yeah, Oz is right. He's great. And when I'm trying to learn stuff, he's who I go to. We're from the same area, or we live in the same area. So I sometimes go and hang out with Oz every once in a while. And I just really admire him. He's an incredible guy. Oz DeSolier, if anyone's wondering and you want to see his extensive collection of tutorials. We've got Ronald from Dubai. He said, I saw your videos on TikTok. I like your dashboard designs. I started a new job recently as a data analyst, and at the same time, I'm doing freelance graphic design. I love that. So Ronald, you doing graphic design alongside your data work, your data analyst work, is going to be a huge advantage in your career. So really pay attention as you learn those graphic design principles. Really pay attention to how those apply to your data analyst work, how you present your data, how you communicate with your data, the graphic elements in your data. That is a way to differentiate yourself. Because right now, there's millions of people getting into data analysis and working with Excel. So it's very competitive and it can be hard to stand out. But if you take those graphic design skills you're learning and apply them, it's going to go really, really far and it's going to help a lot. Especially if you can specialize. Like if you can find people who need a freelance graphic designer to work with a report that has a lot of data, take on that project and really push it as far as you can and do as good of a job as you possibly can. And that's going to it's going to take you so far. I don't think I'm the best graphic designer or the best data analyst or, data person, right? I'm not best at either of those two things. But because I've taken skills from both of them and applied them to Excel, I can be the best at that element in Excel. And that is enough to really differentiate yourself and kind of start to build a career. So anyway, Ronald, great to hear from you. I appreciate that. Andrea says, for geovisualizations, can it be done at the county or zip code level in a single state? Andrea, I believe it can. And this is something I get asked about a lot, but I haven't really tested it because I don't have a lot of just county level or zip code level data right now. So here's the thing. Test this yourself, but a couple tips for when you're testing it. One, make sure that you've got your columns labeled properly, right? So if it's county, it says county in the header. It's really important because the GeoChart engine needs that to figure out what everything is. But also add extra columns. So if you're showing a particular county or zip code, don't just put county or zip code and assume that the engine's going to figure it out. Put county or zip code and then next to it put the state name and then next to it put the country name even, right? The more columns you have, the easier it is for the geo engine. It's using Bing. Bing's map engine is what's being used for this. The easier it's going to be for Bing's map engine to figure out what all those locations are that you're talking about. Just a tip for all geocharts, basically anywhere you make geocharts, that's all very helpful and important. For anyone wondering, right, when you do geocharts in any data visualization tool, any BI tool, it is not like, it doesn't just have like a list built in of every location on Earth. It's typically typically connecting to an outside service, right? Google Maps, Bing Maps, that sort of thing. It's running the locations through that. Bing Maps or Google Maps or whatever is kind of guesstimating what that place is based off of the information you're sending it, and then it's sending it back in a data format that's more definitive. I think it's probably sending it back as like lat long or something. I'm not sure what. So for context, when you do this, you really gotta label things really, really clearly. Yeah, sorry I couldn't be more helpful, Andrea. I just very rarely get down to the city, county level when I do my geocharts. But I think I might do a template for that sometime soon. So I'll let you know if I do. Right, everyone. So if I don't see any more questions, I think I am going to hop off. I've got a work call starting with another Excel person actually in about 10 minutes. If anybody knows Deb, Deb's on TikTok. I believe it's Cellmates is her account name, I think. She does a lot of really great tutorials around Excel and PowerPoint. So if you're in that space, check out Deb. I'm going to be talking with her soon, actually. Okay. All right. Yeah. I'm not seeing any more questions come in. So I'm going to start winding down. As always, if you want to hop on the newsletter, there's a link to it on my profile. All I do on the newsletter, literally all I do, is send out free templates with instructions about how to learn from them. That's it. So that's what that learning resource is. It takes a lot of work and a lot of money to keep that thing going. So use it because it's there. If you want to follow me on TikTok, that's typically where most of my stuff is posted. I'm big Excel energy on TikTok. And if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn and stuff too, feel free. I love connecting to people, and talking to folks that are doing, work in this space. And yeah, I really appreciate everybody tuning in. Everybody I've just found to be very incredibly supportive and cool in this space. Ibrahim, you're so welcome, by the way. Ibrahim says, thanks, Josh. I learned a lot from you. I'm super happy to hear that. And there'll be more to come. I got lots more to teach everybody that I'll be posting. I'm working on a course, but it just takes forever to build courses. So I think we probably have another couple months before that's done. And yeah, if you have questions too, just ask. Throw them in the comments, TikTok or YouTube, anywhere. Just comment, let me know. I'll do my best to answer them. I get a lot of messages from people though. So like, if your question is something like, how do I build a sales report? I'm not going to be able to answer. But if it's something specific, I'll do my best to respond to everyone. Okay, thanks everybody. Have a good one. We'll be back soon with more. I kind of prefer streaming here on YouTube, so I might do my lives here more, unless I find a way to do both at the same time. So anyway, thanks so much, everybody. Have a good one. I'll talk to you all soon, and thanks so much for tuning in. Bye.